this because my father told me like a week before this went up.
All right, it is 6:01 on Wednesday, November 19th. This is the Budget Subcommittee. Just a reminder to folks, this meeting is being recorded and televised. All questions and comments will be handled in person. We don't have any mechanism for taking questions remotely. I'm going to ask the members of the subcommittee to introduce themselves, including their affiliation to the community and for the record. We'll start with you, Kelly, and move down.
Kelly Lamb, I'm a member of the Budget Subcommittee from Finance Committee.
I'm Mike DiPietro with Finance Committee as well.
Craig Davidson, I'm a guest tonight. I'm the Director of Special Services for the school district.
And Joe Spagno, I'm also a guest, the Director of Finance for the school district.
I'm Leisha Cabral. I'm the Superintendent of Schools.
I'm Wendy Nightingale. I'm also a guest. I'm the Finance Director and Town Accountant.
I'm Jackie Wiseman. I'm the Vice Chair of the Budget Subcommittee and the Chair of the School Committee.
Connor Reed, I'm the Town Administrator.
Jamie Stebbins, Select Board.
And Jennifer Stacy, Select Board. So our first item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from November 10th. Sean sent these around previously. Did everyone have a chance to read them over? Mm-hmm. Okay, then I need a motion and a second.
So moved. Stebbins.
Cabral, second.
Okay, so that's Stebbins and Cabral. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. All right. So the second item we have on the agenda, and the reason you are all here, is to hear more about our budget situation as part of the community forum. So, as I said, my name is Jennifer Stacy, the chair of the Budget Subcommittee, and I am one of the members from the Select Board. We're going to start with this segment with a brief presentation, and the remainder of our time will be used for discussion and Q&A. The Budget Subcommittee wanted to use this opportunity to share the updates on what's happened since the failed override on June 10th, discuss what may be coming for fiscal year 27, and share additional ways to get involved. For those of you who attended town meeting on November 10th, some of this is going to be familiar, but we have added some additional information around what's been cut and information on types of overrides based on the feedback we got from that session. For some background, Budget Subcommittee was started in 2013 after town meeting. It includes representatives from the Select Board, Finance Committee, and School Committee, as well as Town Administrator and Superintendent of Schools. This group meets regularly and takes a collaborative approach to examining budget forecasts and making policy recommendations on Easton's fiscal priorities and needs. Budget Subcommittee is not PACE. We did not meet over the year that PACE met, as this would have been duplicative. And we aren't here to rehash the facts that PACE uncovered, and we will not be following that process. We just wanted to be clear about all that. Residents that voted in June made it really clear that they did not support the override ballot measure as it was presented. So following the failure of the ballot, the Select Board had until September to put forth the same ballot question, but decided against it. That being said, as your elected leaders, we made a commitment to understanding the issues facing our community, and it is our responsibility to provide options. The choice is ultimately up to voters. As you'll see in the following slides, the problems the town anticipated have not gone away, and we anticipate the next few years are going to continue to be difficult. The Budget Subcommittee and our representative boards and committees are focused on navigating through the rest of fiscal year 26 and developing a recommendation for 27. We will not be doing the extensive outreach of PACE, as I mentioned earlier, but later we will share opportunities for community involvement and discussion, and those will ultimately form a recommendation that goes to the Select Board. So what has happened since June 10th? I'm not going to go into details of this extensively. What we can do is during Q&A, we can refer back to any of the questions, which is actually kind of difficult to see up here. Maybe I should go through it. All right, I will go through it a little bit because it's kind of fuzzy. Can everybody hear me okay? Not really. Okay, I'll try to be louder. All right, so what you see up here, yeah, I'll do better. All right, thank you. All right.
There we go.
Awesome.
Is better?
Yes.
All right, so what you see up here is what's happened since June 10th, and it is a little fuzzy, so I'll spend a few more seconds going through it at a high level. By law, municipalities in Massachusetts are required to submit a balanced budget each year. In order to meet this requirement, the significant cuts had to be made in the non-override version of the FY26 budget that was ultimately adopted. Broadly, since the majority of any department's budget is headcount, cuts have been driven by reductions in positions across the town and school. Overall, you see here 50 positions, budgeted positions that have been cut. Later in the presentation, we'll have more clarity on exactly what that means for the town and for the school this year. This has had a lot of downstream effects around increased outsourcing and privatization. If you were at the town meeting, you saw the discussion around the fire department and the privatization of the ambulance. If your kids are in school, you may be hearing about larger classroom sizes. We're hearing from parents on that. And it's, for many students, that's a huge problem, and will continue to be a problem as class sizes continue to grow without intervention. These staffing reductions have had a significant impact on staff morale and retention, and our ability to deliver services the way our community has been accustomed to. The town has experienced a high employee turnover, and it's been difficult to replace critical roles. Departments are relying on meeting staffing needs through involuntary overtime, resulting in burnout. As a result, as you heard at town meeting, this has been a huge challenge for us with all these various pieces. I'm going to switch over to talk through these specifically. So downstream effects here, I'm going off script. Increasing reliance on outsourcing privatization. Because you can't see it, the points here are around the privatization of ambulance and the potential termination of the town's curbside trash recycling program, which the DPW supports. So there's a staffing element there. Closure of non-mandatory program services and amenities. So as you know, the town pool has been closed, which has been a big topic of discussion among many people in the community. We've had staffing cuts at Town Hall, reduced HCS transportation and programs, and Blanche Ames Library is no longer staffed. Again, the staffing will be covered in more detail in future slides. We are increasingly in situations where you have to rely on fees and tuition. At town meeting, the voters approved efforts to look into stormwater fee program in more depth. And then there's other needs around enterprise for DPW infrastructure. So this is a challenge for having to be more creative with finding ways to meet these needs. And those also include looking at license and permitting fees and other costs, where any way we can bring in revenue to close gaps. And then what happens is this puts us in a weakened capital position. So we reduce our ability to borrow, our infrastructure goes into a state of disrepair, and ultimately all these things end up costing us more money in the end. Because as we know as the fire department, which that decision isn't based on cost savings, it's really a headcount issue. Once you hit a certain point, like it's really hard to just go back and fix it by going back to do what you did before. Sometimes we have to make bigger and deeper changes, and that's what's happened in many cases. So I am going to turn it over to Connor Reed to talk us through specifics on the town positions that have been cut since June 10th.
Thank you, Jen. So up on screen here. Thank you. Is this better? Great. So up on screen here.
Oh, you're breaking them. What is it?
Up on screen behind me, you can see itemized both what was cut. So on your left-hand side of the screen, those were the positions that were planned to be cut in the non-override budget that was approved at town meeting. We're down to police. 2 fire positions were eliminated in the budget, but as folks know, if you went to town meeting or are following events in town, that had shaken the confidence in that department. A lot of municipal unions do layoffs in reverse seniority order, and so as we have been very forthright with the challenges that we're going to face in 27 and onward, as folks who are most recently hired are looking at the next 12 to 18 months in a very competitive job market for paramedics, folks begin to take opportunities elsewhere. And when you're the second or third least senior, you may not be concerned about the situation, but then when the first and second person in front of you go and now you are the least senior, that it creates a run on the bank. And so we ended up down nearly 25% of our fire department. Public Works, 2 positions were cut in the non-override budget. 2 are currently technically funded, but we are leaving them vacant and unfilled because we anticipate more cuts next year. I think a sense of scale here is important. The general fund Public Works department is about 22 to 24 people, so 4 positions being missing is significant. You're looking at nearly 20% of your department. In general government, we cut a position in the collector treasurer's office. That there's only 2 of that type, and so that has resulted in that front-facing window being closed half of the week. Since fee override failed, in anticipating having to make more cuts going into 27, as folks have turned over, as Jen referred to, Easton has enjoyed a very long tenure of many of its employees. And that is changing, and there are folks who are taking opportunities elsewhere. And as that has happened with certain ones, we are making decisions to cut them as we go, rather than solicit somebody for perhaps a non-legally mandated role that's still a desirable role, like a transportation coordinator for Health and Community Services, to make sure that folks who don't have their own vehicles or don't have folks in their family who could bring them to medical appointments, that's a desirable position that exists for good reason, but it's not legally mandated. And so rather than hire someone into that role when we know we're going to be making cuts next July, we cut it now. So we've cut a position in Health and Community Services. We have cut another position in general government, which has resorted, so again, talking about scale, when you cut one position in the planning department's 5 people. So you're down 20% of your staff capacity. Cumulatively, between vacancies and cuts, the town operations, that's police, fire, public works, town hall, health and community services, down 19 positions from where we were in fiscal 25, which is about 11% of our workforce. We already have a very lean workforce. And so when this happens, what that means is the services get reduced. And so functionally, you know, the reality of this is about more than just positions, although those have a very real human impact on our employees. What does that actually mean to you folks as far as the quality of life? And so what this is translated into is that overnight staffing for police dropped from a minimum of 4 patrol on the roads to 3, which is the lowest it's been and as long as I've been here. And this is a large town, 28 square miles to cover. The detective division has dropped from 4 to 3, which is too few to meet the workload that this division of police faces. That means that they will have a lower clear rate. This means that they have to focus only on the most significant crimes and will not necessarily be able to help with property crime, break-ins necessarily, which is not what our detectives want. That's not what our police department wants. The fire department, as I think has been pretty acutely visible, there has been a significant increase in forced overtime, where we went from having 4 groups of 11 firefighters who could drop down to 8, which means if you have 3 people who are injured, sick, holiday time, vacation time, you can still run the 8 you need to have the department function. Now all of those groups are near or at 8, which means that if one person can't be at work, someone has to be there on overtime, which is not only inefficient economically, it burns people out. And so you have firefighters working sometimes 72 hours at a time, which is why we've made the decision with the chief that we're moving to a new model that will help stabilize that, but it's going to be very different. In DPW, there's been delays in our ability, even for things we do have funding for, things like state funding for road projects. You still need staff to get out there, control the road, get the asphalt out, and so we're moving slower and not getting as much done as we otherwise would. We are currently relying on seasonal and temporary staff that typically we would employ over the summer to assist with maintenance of grounds for essential grounds work, because we don't have the staff any longer to be keeping up. The town pool is closed, our senior transportation programs are being reduced. Town hall has one department on one side of the first floor closed 20 hours a week, has another on the second side of the second floor that's closed 40 hours a week to the public. We're having to rely on increasing fees, which again is not something we want to do, but we need a minimum amount of things coming in to keep the lights on. And then there's community building things that we simply don't have the bandwidth to do anymore. We will not be doing Citizens Academy next year, which is some folks in this room who went to that. That's a really good program that brings people in to meet the people who manage your community, meet the elected officials, meet the people who run the schools, so that you feel more comfortable coming to meetings like this, or talking to us, or asking us a question that's frankly probably uncomfortable, and knowing that we're your neighbors and we're people too, and we all might not always agree on exactly how to get there, but we want the same things, which is a successful Easton. We can't do that when our staff is getting dropped and everyone is redlining and getting burned out. There is a significant increase in burnout, which has led to turnover. And when we have certain positions that cannot be cut, we're seeing a reduction in the amount of applicants, which is a big change. Easton is a leader in this field. Easton, in part due to the folks who live here, is a really desirable place. It's a place that values professionalism. It's a place that is progressive, not in the partisan political sense, but that is trying to do good things for the students of Easton, for residents of Easton, and that makes it desirable for folks. And although it's public sector, it's the same principle. It's a market economy principle. There's only so many folks who want to do these jobs, and when you're in a tough spot, it gets harder to bring them. So that's just a kind of some insight, hopefully in a way to make more real, rather than just saying, here's a bunch of titles that are gone. The community can still operate, but we're moving away from and having to really retrench on regulatorily required, safety-related activities. And as we prepare for next year, we have to balance the budget, and we will. We can't build a budget that assumes an override passes. So the non-override budget that will be coming out in January will be a pretty hard budget. And it's not reflective of certainly what I would like to see for the staff or for the programs or for the people who live here, but we have to balance the budget. And as we and other folks around the state are just getting smothered by 10, 15+% healthcare premium increases, which I know many of you are probably getting in your personal lives, which makes this a terrible time to ask you to voluntarily pay more, right? It either has to come on the revenue side or it has to come out of expenses, and the expenses that we have managerial control over are our people. And so we're gonna keep doing everything we can. I'm not trying to scare you. I hope it doesn't sound that way. We're gonna keep doing everything we can to really buckle down and focus on, core safety, legal, regulatory functions. But Jen alluded to earlier, I think there's a lot of pride in Easton in the quality of life here, and that's going to be a change from, I think, the level of service folks are accustomed to here. So I'm going to turn it over to the school department to talk a bit about how things have been shifting for them and what this has begun to look like for the schools.
Good evening, everyone. I'm assuming the slide has changed. I can't see it behind me. What this slide represents is the level of reductions that took place at the school department this fiscal year. It's 44.8 FTEs, or full-time equivalents. That is not necessarily the number of positions. The positions are probably greater than that because these are just the full-time equivalencies of each position. I think what's important to point out is the broad spectrum of cuts that took place across all departments. Those 44.8 positions are devastating to the school department, and we're managing. And I think what's even more important is to stress the impact that this has had on our kids, our children, and on the staffing. And so with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Davidson. He's going to go into a little bit about how this is impacting the kids of the district.
Thank you. When we look up at the screen and we see an abundance of cuts across our district, there are a few we wanted to highlight tonight and really talk about the impact it's having on our children and also our staff members. Lunch playground aides at Blanche Ames would cover 2 hours of recess time each and every day for our school. Now that responsibility is going into our kindergarten paraprofessionals who are being removed from kindergarten classrooms to now cover our recess time. How that's impacting our students is massive. They're not having the extra support within the classrooms to do breakout groups and do stations during those 2 hours that the staff members are covering recess. And it's taking a toll on our kindergarten teachers who are now, with increased class sizes, working with more students within their classrooms. Another huge point that we can transition right into is our class sizes. Across the board, preschool through 12, we've had an increase in our class sizes, the largest being in 8th grade. Last year at this time, we had an average of 22 students per class in 8th grade. We are now at 28.4 students per classroom. That's greatly impacting our staff with the amount of work that they have to complete at night, but also the preparation to support an extra 6.5 students in their classrooms per class. We also saw, as someone mentioned earlier, the reduction in library resource aides within our district. Blanche Ames used to have a library resource aide who provided direct service to our students day in and day out. The library was a constant energy source within our schools. Kids were in and out all day long. The library is still available to our students by classroom teachers and or volunteers who are providing time to open the library so books can be taken out of our library for our students. At RO, we had 2 learning specialists that were part of the cuts last year. Learning specialists are special education teachers within our schools. Here at Blanche Ames, it's a huge impact on our whole school. Those staff members are now collaborating, the ones that are left, are collaborating with more classroom teachers across grade levels, decreasing the consistency and time needed for co-planning and collaboration between classroom teachers and special educators. This daily collaboration is necessary to provide high levels of service to our students. The staff that remain have seen an increase in caseloads because the students haven't gone down. And so special education services have been spread out to more staff members who are still with us within the schools. We saw a reduction within paraprofessionals across the board within their positions, directly impacting our preschool classrooms, which have caused an increase in caseloads for the staff that are still in preschool, but also less coverage for student safety throughout the day. And what happens is when there's absences within our buildings and we don't have coverage, there's more pressure put on our staff to cover outside of their realm. And so you might have staff members covering classrooms they're not consistently working with, and so they're learning new students, they're learning new behaviors, they're learning new support systems that are greatly impacting our educational system within Blanche Ames. At the secondary levels, we're seeing, because of the reduced staff, a larger need in covering multiple subjects across the board. So a paraprofessional who might have worked with just an English or math teacher in the past and got to know the curriculum at a specific grade level now might be covering more classes throughout the core subjects, but also at different grade levels. And so it's an increased workload for them. And it's greatly impacting the services that we're providing students and the quality services we're known for in the area. And last is our music and art programs. Easton is known for their music and art programs, state and even nationally. There's artwork hanging in some of our Congress offices down in Washington, D.C. that are talked about consistently. We're offering less electives, K through 12, for students to be able to access in those areas. And this is greatly impacting our students and their pride and what they like to be involved with within the Easton Public Schools. I'm going to now hand it over to Dr. Cabral.
Thank you. Of course, our students are our center. We say we have an inverted pyramid, and I'm with the school committee at the very point of that, and our responsibility is to support every single person above us, and ultimately all of the students. So that information is of course the most important. However, even from an administrative perspective, in order to support those very important people who work with our students, they're at the same time that they're increasing their class sizes, increasing their caseloads, increasing their responsibility, they're getting less support from the administration because we have lost resources and positions as well. So how does that look from a staff member's perspective or even a parent's perspective? A delay in response times. We've had to close central admin offices. We close it for 3 hours every day because we don't have enough staff to cover even lunches for the people that are working in the front office. We have legally mandated and compliance issues. It is very counterintuitive, but the typical consequence for anything falling through the cracks in a legal or mandated way is withholding funds. So when you are hurting from withholding funds and you have less people to make sure that all the boxes are checked and all the reports are in and everything is done, they will punish you for missing any of that by withholding those very funds that you're using to try to keep everything together. So it's critical that we do that. We have proactive needs that we've tried to handle in the past. Anything that we're not taking care of proactively, helping students before they're having an issue, providing interventions before they need special education services. All of those things that aren't handled proactively become reactive and inherently a lot more expensive. We also are having trouble with our staffing. Since I've been here, we have had record-breaking number of applicants for every single position in this district. When I started here 13 years ago, for a decade, people would come and volunteer in our schools, substitute, serve as a paraprofessional, just to get their foot in the door. Some of them 6, 7, 8 years so that they could get a teaching position here. Now we're really struggling to keep those positions, and it's understandable. When you have that many layoffs in so many areas, people are afraid to make a change or to start in the district and they're not sure if they're going to be able to continue. It's an issue for getting qualified staff, but the reason why it's so detrimental to us as a district is because we've gotten as far as we've gotten with the lean budget that we've had on the backs of those staff members, because of their talent, because of their dedication to our kids, because we're very selective in who joins our team. Having less applicants or no applicants really compromises that quality. We have some positions this year that, for the first time, multiple positions that we can't get any applicants for. Some of those are legally mandated services, and so we are forced to go to a third-party employment agency, which of course is more expensive than having the employee in the first place. And so trying to save money by reducing staff has these unintended consequences of costing more money or being punished by withheld funds. If you have students in the schools, you may have heard from them. They're having less one-on-one time with their teachers and their service providers because there are just more students to staff. You may have a delay in responses to you. We've always prided ourselves in being very responsive and communicative with families. They have a lack of technology. We cannot buy technology anymore, and so we are utilizing the technology we have. We went from having one-to-one devices where every student had a device. Now we only have that in high school, and we have to preserve that so that we can keep that going as long as possible. The most painful thing, I think, to us that work with these incredible staff members every day is the impact it's having on them. So we're hoping that families aren't hearing an awful lot from their students about things that are happening, because that's our job, is to try to make sure we're providing state-of-the-art services, regardless of what we're working with, to do that. But it is definitely taking a toll. Staff morale is very low. People are taking on the roles of 2 and 3 different people, and you can imagine there's only so long that you can do that. So we have, one of the talking points I use in interviews with people is our transient rate. People come to Easton, they retire in Easton. And I haven't really been able to say that because in the last 2 years we've had a lot of people leaving the district and looking for more secure employment. And again, can't be faulted for that, I completely understand it. What we do want to drive home though is, we lost 16% of our workforce as we're getting more younger students coming in, and students across the board, as is across the Commonwealth, presenting with far more complex issues post-pandemic. What's going to happen next year, we've been told level funding is what we can anticipate. That's before we account for any of the increases in labor contracts, transportation contracts, utilities. And last year we cut over $2 million from our budget last year, and it resulted in this. And we anticipate cutting more than that this year. If that's the case, we're losing about 30 to 35% of our workforce, but having to put out the same product and provide the same services to children. So when next year comes around, it's going to be far more obvious, unfortunately. We're doing our best and we're going to give it our all, and we're going to do what we know is best for kids day in and day out. That's just what our talented staff does. But it's going to be impossible to see the programs, the services, the electives, the clubs, the activities, the sports, the things that kids are accustomed to here in Easton is going to be very different. And it's just important that people are aware of that, anticipate that. It's not in a threatening or scary way. It's scary to us, but it isn't intended that way. We're just trying to be informative. We have had these conversations for many years, and this year we're finding that we're getting approached by different groups and parents saying, well, I didn't realize it was going to impact my kid. This is going to impact kids. There's no question about it. I want to be crystal clear about that. We're going to mitigate the impact as much as we possibly can, but there is going to be impact. And it's just important that people know that and are informed in making decisions going forward, what to anticipate. We don't like any surprises. We're very committed to transparency, and so we just want to make sure that any misunderstandings last year about how this year was going to be don't translate to next year, because it is going to be a very, very different environment here.
So what does this mean for next year? Many of the issues we faced last year will continue into next year. Easton is not alone in facing these difficulties. Many of our neighboring communities are confronting similar challenges. A major challenge facing Easton and other communities, which has already been mentioned, is the rapidly rising healthcare costs. Health insurance premiums are increasing again by double digits, which is a concerning trend. Meanwhile, the state is tightening its budget and may be compelled to make mid-year budget cuts. Nationally, the economic outlook is uncertain. We understand this is a difficult time for everyone. Household costs have risen rapidly with no relief in sight. However, as has been stated, we are legally required to balance our budget. With rising costs and uncertainty around state aid, we are facing another year of deep cuts to our town and school budgets. To address this, the School Committee, Select Board, and Finance Committee have been discussing override options to help reduce the extent of the cuts. All of the discussions have been during our regular meetings and are available to watch on ECAT. The potential override options are outlined on the next slide, and our Connor Reed, our town administrator, will discuss them.
Thanks, Jackie. So I want to reemphasize here something that Jen mentioned at the outset, which is that PACE, which was a committee that town meeting adopted through the budget approval for fiscal 25, so going back a while now, May 24, had a charge to make a recommendation on a structural fix. It was clearly rejected, right? And we're not here to relitigate that or be sour grapes. But the select board talked about that, and under the law, an override ballot fails after town meeting approves an override budget, which town meeting did. The board could just put it back out again. But the margin was so large that the board opted not to, right? It gets to a point where, you know, how your town administrator feels about it, or even the board as individuals, it's not fully relevant, right? This is a democracy and people spoke. And so what I hope this doesn't feel like is us saying we're just going to put the PACE recommendation forward again. And something that we all heard individually, and you folks have probably heard, is that there were folks looking at what we recommend was a one big number and fix. And folks who said, well, you know, It's either that number's too big or it feels too kind of squishy. If only it was this type or that type. And so what I want to talk through here are what the options are for different types under the law. Now, Easton has only approved 2 operating overrides ever in the history of Prop 2.5. One in the 90s and the last one in 06, which we're going on now 20 years. One was a menu in the 90s, and one was the omnibus package in 06. Since 06, the town has tried twice and recommended an omnibus fix in 2016 and again last year. Both times failed by a similar 2-to-1 margin. And so on screen you'll see there are, when you're talking about 1 year, we'll get to the footnote last, when you're talking about 1 year, you have 3 choices under state law. Again, this has nothing to do with my feelings on the subject. The first one is a single purpose. That's sometimes called omnibus. That's what we tried last year. That's what we tried in 2016, and that is not palatable. It's one yes, no. It's a broad, it generally in Easton has been broad, X amount of dollars to address town and school funding. Then there is a menu, or what's called multiple question. And so what that ballot structure looks like is you get your ballot, and there's a series of questions that are yes, no. And each question funds a different thing. So it could be, shall we raise the tax levy by X dollars for the public school budget? Shall we raise the tax levy by Y dollars for police and fire? And it could get much more targeted. There are benefits to that approach. It becomes, I think, clearer to folks exactly what the goal is without them having to come to a meeting like this or review a budget to understand where the funding will go. There are drawbacks, which is that at the end of the day, all of our operations is one large community budget. And so while you may end up in a situation where perhaps public safety is funded, if every other department fails, you still have a structural problem that will be there 12 months later. That does not mean there's no merit to the approach. We just want to be super clear, right? If you have a $100 million budget, to use round numbers, and 10 million, which is public safety, gets a lifeline thrown to it, and the other 90 doesn't, then when you go into the next year and these fixed cost trends are still hitting you, even the departments that were supported at the ballot box are still going to have a tough, you're right back into it. Then there is, I don't love using the phrase pyramid when you're talking about finances, but sometimes referred to as a pyramid override or a tiered override, where you have multiple questions again, but it is the same purpose, just different dollar amounts. So you may have, shall the town raise the levy by $3 million to support town and school services? Shall the town raise the levy by $5 million? Shall the town raise the levy by $9 million? And so that gives a lot of voter choice on the total dollar amount, but it's not necessarily as prescriptive as a menu, if that makes sense. And under that situation, whichever highest dollar amount gets over 50% is the one that sticks. It's not additive, so if you have two, or we'll say 3, 5, 7 frees, if all 3 pass, you do 7. It's not 15. As even my kind of mumbling through that one shows, there's one of the challenges with that one is it's perhaps not as clear. But again, that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different. So those are the 3 primary types and ways that these questions can be organized for voters to make these decisions about their community. Again, for the past 20 years, Easton has leaned towards single purpose. But we're here tonight, and what I think during Q&A we'd like to hear from people is, one, what are your priorities? What are the programs and services you're concerned with or want to see more support for, or perhaps less support for? And is there any version of this that you think has any merit at all from your perspective? It's not like, this isn't a right or a wrong answer. We want to hear because, we can all do 600 meetings and do deep data dives on the one best right way from a kind of CFO perspective, but at the end of the day, this is a democracy, and we would like to know from residents, what do you think would make sense? And we are all aware that no is an option on every one of these, right? And that whatever format gets before it, that there's going to be folks for whom either due to their personal finances, this is not acceptable, or perhaps they don't think the approach is right. And so something, overrides are very hard to talk about. But something I'd also like to reemphasize is this is your elected leaders doing their job and giving you a choice. It is ultimately the voters' call what level of service there is. This is not, sometimes folks get concerned when a select board is talking about, a select board can't will an override or a tax increase into existence. They do not have that power. They can put the question to you, as it ought to be. So those are the three types for 1 year. There's a multi-year override option, but it's pretty rare. Happy at the end if someone's curious about it to go into it, but it would be multiple questions about increasing the levy in multiple years into the future. So that was a little different. I'm going to close out by handing it back to Chair Stacy just to talk about where we go from here, and then I think we're going to take your questions.
Thank you, Connor. Before I change the slide and distract you all with new words on a screen, I'm going to just kind of share a couple of thoughts that came to me as I was listening to the folks up here speak and give some detail. The first thing is, addressing what Connor said, I just want to reiterate that any decision we make around an override that is not what PACE presented, because again, PACE was based on a lot of research and fact and deliberations and understanding. Any option that is less than that is going to be a Band-Aid. It'll be a Band-Aid of various sizes depending on how this plays out at the ballot in April, but I just want to reiterate that this doesn't solve our problems. The structural revenue situation is still a challenge, and it's not a quick fix to the staffing problems and other things that have been causing a lot of challenges for our across the board. The second thing I wanted to just point out is that we don't all feel the impacts of these budget cuts the same way. First, the staff and the town work incredibly hard to not let these things show. So we often don't see how bad things are from the public stands until it's hit critical point as people leave, or we don't have that critical phone call answered. Our needs of resources and services change the seasons of our life. On a personal level, several years ago, my family was relying heavily on ambulance service. And that was something that, if I had been listening to this conversation, would have been really freaking out about, because it was something so critical to my family. That season of my life has changed. Now I have kids that are in schools, and I'm very aware of the fact that I went on to teacher conferences the other day, and the teachers all looked exhausted. They were fantastic and had mapped out bullet points about what my kids have done. And one of them said, I'm doing 77 of these. And I couldn't wrap my head around going through 77 conversations based on 77 children that I'm serving. So just putting that out there is kind of a reminder that, it's easy to look from our own lens, but sometimes you've got to kind of broaden your horizon and think about all these pieces together and what the needs are across the community and how they're so varied and unique. Okay, so now, ways to engage in timeline. So you're here tonight, and that's awesome, and we're going to have some open conversation in a minute. If you like what you see tonight, as far as conversation and engagement, I welcome you to come December 10th for a similar conversation. Tell your friends, because we really need public input to continue this. The recommendation that comes from the Budget Subcommittee will be heavily guided by the things we hear, married to what we understand. So this is really important for us. And then up here, you'll see key dates. These are estimates. So the Budget Subcommittee is working on its recommendations. I anticipate in January we'll make our recommendations to the Select Board. That's, again, non-binding, but that is generally the intention. The budget will be published January and February. Numbers are starting to trickle in now, and some of them don't look very good. So we started to have an idea early on about what this could look like. And as Connor has said over years prior, it gets refined as time goes on. So we'll have more and more information over the coming months, but that January, February point is a pretty big moment where we understand where things are going to be. The Select Board will finalize the override ballot language sometime in February or March. Again, this will be based on the approach we decide to take. And then we'll have annual town election on April 28th. The Select Board confirmed that we will be having the election on Tuesday this year, so April 28th is the date. And annual town meeting will be in May. As a reminder, we will need to pass at both the ballot and at town meeting in order for the override to succeed. And then fiscal year 27 starts on July 1st in 2026. And here is some information about ways to keep in touch and connected. So there's the link to where we're going to put all information around this year's budget planning cycle and references to all these materials from these meetings, budget subcommittee meetings, etc. You can and should sign up for the Town Crier. It is a fantastic resource that will hit your inbox and remind you of all sorts of important dates and events around town. It's not all budget. There's lots of information in there, and it's really easy to sign up. You can email budget@easton.ma.us. If you are camera shy and don't want to get to the microphone, we welcome emails. If you are brushing your teeth and realize you have a great idea, send us an email. We do read them, we take them seriously, and we appreciate them. And lastly, the upcoming meeting, December 10th, will be another opportunity. And then any future budget subcommittee meetings as well. That schedule gets posted, and we can make sure that there's some awareness around that in the Town Crier as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it open to folks to share their input, to give us some feedback on the questions Connor asked earlier that are also raised up here again around just any questions, comments about services that are important to you or things you think could be changed. And we're really interested to hear your feedback on override and what those options, feedback on those options, how you're feeling about them, etc. So I'm going to open the floor. What's the best way to do this? Because we have one mic. Okay.
I can pass this on.
Does that one work?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does. It's just finicky.
Okay. So I'm seeing up here, and Sean has a microphone. Oh, that's mine. Does it go from one to the other?
It might.
Okay.
I can walk.
Let me see. Okay. Well, let's try it when I stop talking. Let you do it. Okay. So we're gonna experiment for a second. Bear with us. So I'll be up here emceeing, and as a reminder, please try to keep questions and comments to about 2 minutes for each time you're at the microphone. We won't limit how many times you go up to the microphone, as long as we're kind of staying on target and on focus. Please state your name and address for the record. That's really important. And so we'll go from there. So if you have a question or comment, please raise your hand.
Give this a go.
Hello? Oh. You know what? I'm going to come down and just MC from there.
Or you could yell.
I can yell.
There's not a ton of us here.
Yeah,
We could.
you're good. Let's get a camera on the camera better. So I'm happy to walk around.
Fix that up.
One of the things I wanted to mention is the late posting of this on the calendar. I mean, you can see how few people are here. It was not on the town calendar. The other thing that I wanted to mention, we had, mostly the school committee speaking today. I'm surprised we don't have other representatives from other departments that have cuts and have taken some steps to deal with the problem with the budget. And one of the things I'd like to point out is that I think the public, we are mostly uneducated on town politics and what goes on. And one of the things that I happen to know about and concerns me is with the fire department. It looks like they had a budget cut, so what they're doing is privatizing the ambulances. That is going to cost us more. And people aren't aware of these things. And how do you expect an intelligent vote when people don't have the information. And most people are not going to seek it out unless it's presented to them in some way or another. You're not going to have very intelligent voting.
Can you give me your name and address for the record?
Yes, Linda Plucci, 21 Prospect.
Linda Plucci, 241 Prospect. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Jen?
Yes. Right ahead. You want to?
Sure.
Maybe Ms. Bellucci or someone else, I would just kind of toss the question back and ask what are the most effective means of communicating, because the PACE committee was together last year and 19 people put in thousands of hours. We have websites dedicated to it. We sent flyers home to people's houses. It was in the town flyer. We talked about it at school committee, select board, finance committee. Those aren't working, evidently. So what are, if you could help us understand, what are the places, the means? We set up tables at school meetings. We had coffees, and we're doing it again. So if you could help us, just anyone really, what can continue to happen, or where can we go? What can we do? We've been to houses of worship. We've been to COA. We've been to Frothingham. We've been to
Town Democratic and Republican
sporting events.
Posting on social media.
Yeah. So other than those things, which don't seem to be working, what are some of the things? We would like to get that information from you guys. It would be really, really helpful.
Before I turn to that, does anybody else want to comment on anything?
Yeah, sure.
Ms.
So
Bellucci said?
I appreciate the comment on, I suppose, representation. I am here representing the town, and I can answer any questions that anyone has about any town department. I appreciate your insight. I know you're on CERT. You do a lot with the fire department. And we talked about this at like the town meeting and the numerous presentations the chief has given to be very clear for exactly what you have said. We are not framing the ambulance privatization as it's going to save money and fix the budget. You are correct. In the net, it likely won't. This was done to preserve the safety of the firefighters that we have left. Because if they're not safe, then you can't be safe. So I just want to say there are questions about town departments. Don't feel like because the chief is not here tonight that you can't ask me. And also to say thank you for recognizing that, because we want to be, it's like many things in life, right? Where once something breaks, it costs more to fix, right? So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you as well for bringing that up about what different outreach can we do. And like Dr. Cabral said, we're all ears because we know we don't have that group of 19 again like we did last year that just put on so many different events, from coffee to all the things we talked about. And so we don't know how to reach people and create more informed voters, just like you said. Because I feel like when I look around this room tonight, this is a lot of people that are very well informed, and unfortunately you're not the people we want. Right? We want more people to come out and ask us questions. Dottie put it well a few weeks ago. We want our inboxes to be blown up, and they're not. And that was kind of the hope, was that, my gosh, at this point, because my kids are coming home, telling me about, and my son's math, I know the average is 26. His class is larger than that. Teachers are doing an amazing job, but we're burning people out, not just on the operations side and the public safety side. We're burning out our teachers, our educators, our staff, specialists, and that's very, very concerning across the board. I want more people to be like us, engaged and a little bit outraged, honestly, and coming out and saying, what can we do? Because we do know all of our costs are going up. We mentioned that's a big part of it for us, is we see fixed costs that are just moving. They're not fixed, including all of our own health insurance. And so it's very difficult. I know it's hitting a lot of people personally right now, and as Connor mentioned, we mentioned this last year, it's the toughest time to go to ask people for an override, to infuse cash to stabilize our position, but it's when it's most needed. When things are well and interest rates are 2% and cash is nearly free, that's typically not when we're going and asking for money. So we get it. it's tough, but we got to get more people. That's my one ask of everyone in this room, because a lot of you are engaged, is please tell 10 more people. And we tried this last year. Tell 10 more people that on December 10th at Frothingham Hall at 6 p.m., this panel is going to be there again, and we want to line out the door, because this whole group will stay until midnight to answer questions. That's what we wish we were seeing right now, and that's what the community was bringing to us. So thank you. The question is fantastic.
Thanks. I also wanted to say that the school committee is going to be doing some listening sessions coming up. I think we're going to have a couple in December, and then going forward, we're going to try to do some every month. Now, it's not the same as this. You're not going to get a presentation like this. We're going to be at sporting events. We might have coffees in the morning, but it's an opportunity for you to come to us, tell us what you're concerned about. Maybe we can get you some information that you want to get, give you information about more of these types of meetings. So, and we'll be advertising that. It'll be in the town crier, hopefully on the district website, through our school committee meetings. But again, if there are other outlets that you think that we should be putting this information out, please let us know. Thanks.
Thanks. I'd just like to add that besides voter engagement, we're also living in a time where I feel like there's a lot of mistrust for leadership, and like the rapid spread of misinformation. And so in addition to ideas around engagement, one of the things we've been trying to think about is how do we build trust. We heard a lot that people didn't think that these cuts were actually going to happen, and some people are now surprised that they did. And so any ideas you have around handling the misinformation out there and building trust, we'd also be interested in listening to.
No, just okay. She had a question. I think she was going to answer the question.
Just one other thing I'd like to mention, especially as far as the school committee is concerned. You know, we see all the postings about, you know, the reduction in your staff, in the teachers. What I'm more interested in is there's a level of education, and you know, you can't compare, but when I was growing up, I grew up in New York, we had classes well over 30 people, but we didn't have the mental health issues that you're dealing with. And I don't think that's clear enough to people when you're talking about staffing. Your staff has to deal with people with these issues, not just, you know, my kid, everyday kid that goes to school. There needs to be more funds focused on the problems that you're having, and then the teachers can teach without too much problems of their own.
Thank you. Just any response to that, or you talk about it? Yes, I'm coming to you. One second, I'll bring the mic, and if you could just name your name and address.
Sure. Is it listed first? Okay. It's Janet Kelly, 43 Acorn Road. I just wanted to see if Eddie can speak to the safety complex that it's currently under construction at Lake Street. That was a $150 million debt exclusion that we all approved 2 or 3 years ago. And now we're hearing, well, now we can't staff, we have to cut people unless we give more money, now we're not marketable. How do we square with that? Now coming back, now we need more money, and can anyone address that? Because that's kind of how that was presented to us, to staff and attract personnel. And now we're sitting there saying we can't. Thanks.
Thank you. So there's a lot to unpack there, but the reality is our operating position. When I became town administrator, it was in the wake of 2 failed overrides ago. Our reserves had been decimated because the override had been rejected. And our growth of commercial and new tax base was pretty middling. And so we worked extremely hard and successfully to address all of those things, and we did. We through that debt exclusion, right? Because there are some folks who they see that and they say, so we have no money for staff, we have money for buildings. The answer is yes. We don't have to like that answer. The answer is yes, they are legally separate things that can't be moved from one to another. And the reality is that while the debt exclusion for those buildings was passed in 2023, the work that led to that started in 2014. Those projects take years to plan. The work that informed that project was from a comprehensive study that was funded by voters of this town that is going to feel like a distant memory for everyone here, thankfully, that our buildings used to be embarrassing. Our buildings were in an unacceptable state and were unsafe, and they were too small and programmatically inappropriate. So the voters of this town in 2014 funded a comprehensive plan to address that. And while it is hard to see that construction on what is finalizing as we're having to cut staff, the reality is these are 10-year plans to get to a vote, and these are 50 to 75-year buildings. When we were going through feasibility, which was voted on 3 times affirmatively in 2021 and 23, our operating position was, frankly, in the best shape it had been. We had not had an general override in many, many, many years. We were growing operationally rather modestly, on average about 3.3%, and able to fund that without overrides. We were reducing the amount of our budget that needed to be closed in each year with reserves, while building our reserves up and reaching the best levels of growth from commercial investment that we've ever had as a community. So things were moving in the right direction. After those projects were approved is when things really started to change, and things like healthcare, utilities, other fixed costs increased in fiscal 25 and 6 more than they had in the 10 years prior. So to be specific about your question of where do these projects stand? Where these projects stand is that Blanche Ames was approved overwhelmingly by voters when we estimated it would cost the average house $433 a year. And we delivered it more than $10 million under budget through pandemic, and it cost the average house $285 a year. The municipal complex, which is going to replace nearly all of our municipal facilities, which had not been fixed or repaired in generations, well before I was born. That was approved at $150 million. I strongly encourage folks who still see that number and wins to look at building projects anywhere else in Massachusetts, because those are rookie numbers. Regional schools are going for $250 to $500 million. High schools are now touching $1 billion. There are communities, well-run communities, that did not embark on the capital work that we did here that our voters supported, who are facing $400, $500 million to repair their buildings. So where that $150 million budget approval stands is the work is 40% done. The town has expended 2% of its available $18 million in contingency and budget savings. So it is trending significantly under budget and on time. When we forecasted the tax cost to voters, we had estimated that last year, fiscal 25, it would be costing the average house $150. It cost $50. We estimated that this year you would be paying $650. It's $350. I'm not making light of the $350, but to answer the question, we will, as a community, have put our facilities in the best condition they have ever been in for a cumulative cost for less than most towns face now to build a single school. And that is a good thing, because there's going to be hard operating years. They will happen. They will not be helped by having folks work in buildings 1/3 the size full of asbestos. And so that's trending in the right direction. But we appreciate that the contrast is jarring, and it probably makes folks say, they must be overstating the operating problem, or they were, mismanaging the place. Again, PACE went through their work. If somebody has that opinion, then they are entitled to have it. I guess the question would be, so now what? Because these problems aren't going away. They're not afflicting just Easton. So what is an approach that folks are open to? Or maybe there's none, and that's okay. That's folks' prerogative. But the building projects, thankfully, have moved on schedule. Blanche James was significantly less than was approved, and we're going to work hard every day for the next 12 months to make sure that's the case for the other ones.
Connor?
Thanks. I'll just speak to the school. I'm, on behalf of the children, on behalf of the staff, on behalf of all of you, I'm extremely grateful that you supported that project. It's hard for people maybe to remember now, even though it was a short time ago, because we have these buildings that we have. But Blanche Ames took the place of 3 schools that were way past their useful life. We were hemorrhaging money to keep those doors open. In fact, the replacement of the building got us to the point where we just reduced the 44.81 last year. That, if you go back to town meetings, school committee meetings and finance meetings, I was predicting that was going to be sooner, that we were going to get to a point where the structural revenue was going to affect us so badly that we were going to have massive layoffs. It actually bought us a little bit of time. It also was a huge liability. Those schools were full of asbestos and lead, and every repair we did was thousands upon thousands of dollars. We put rug over tile and rug over rug, and there's only so long you can do that. Center School, I can now say publicly, the boiler in Center School was literally held together with duct tape and glue at the end, because we couldn't afford to manufacture the replacement parts, because they didn't exist anymore, to fix the boiler. You would be in such a dire strait as a town right now, worse than right now if those didn't happen. So I will only speak for the school part of it, but we dodged a major, major bullet by putting that school in. And I'm not sure people understand that, but I was in those buildings. We were filming to try to let people see the state of the buildings. And I was in a class, and a little girl, while we're talking to her, had a ceiling tile come crashing down on her desk in front of her, thankfully missing her. I can't even begin to tell you the state that it was in. So, is it inopportune that those things happen, and then we have a problem that nobody could have predicted with the healthcare escalate? Nobody could have predicted. Nobody could have predicted a government shutdown in the history of the government that was longer than ever. Nobody can predict some of these things. We did talk about the override being needed in 2016, and this isn't a told you so kind of thing, but people tend to forget. It was predicted way back then. Had that override passed, all of the debt exclusion and the operating overrides would have been spread out. They wouldn't have been on top of each other. But when things get pushed down the road for 20 years, then yes, things build up and they come to a head at the same time. And so the state of the public safety I won't talk about, though I did see it myself. Raw sewage coming up from bathrooms and showers and literally unsafe conditions. You would have had far worse problems. And honestly, they saved a lot of money. I can only speak to that on the school side with absolute confidence. But what might present as inopportune timing was not intended that way. Town administration spaced it out so that it wouldn't be that way. But democracy, we love it, and it's great, and it gives a choice. But we just have to remember choices were given all along. And if people are choosing not to do things or just can't, fiscally cannot, that is completely understandable. But it's hard to continually hear that there's, when there's a problem, it's our responsibility to bring it to people so they can make a choice. And when that happens, people do not appreciate the timing. But we need to look back at the totality of the timing, I think, and understand that this has been a long time coming. This has been explained every single year. This has been documented and is recorded for posterity that people can go back and look at it. What do we do now that we're here is really the question. And how can we help to give you whatever it is you want as residents and whatever it is you want to pay for. That's our job, and we will do that. And we will continue to do that. But I think people tend to forget just where we were. We didn't get a new school because we wanted something shiny and better. We got a new school because people were going to be hurt. And we were able to avoid that, fortunately, due to your support, and we are very appreciative of that.
Can I add something, Jen?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Just to add one relatively brief thing to that, when we're talking about the debt exclusion overrides and how they fit in, we talk a lot about timing and what have you. And Connor made a comment when you were speaking before that I think you said 2022 we were sort of in a good place, and that's absolutely true. But I think it's necessary to add a lot of context to that in light of the override that failed in 2016. And the point I'd make about that is that override that failed in 2016 was absolutely necessary. What I think a lot of people didn't see in the ensuing years afterwards were the heroic activity of everyone who works in the town government, the fire service, the police service, the teachers, and all of the leadership who went out there and innovated, who did creative things like get us into SEMREC, who take advantage of the health insurance that through the state, a mechanism I don't fully understand to this day, but which actually initially lowered our costs tremendously and put us in such a good presentation. It was that good leadership that allowed us to dodge that bullet in 2016. And every single year after that, I've told Connor, I've gotten almost bored of him at every meeting saying we have a structural revenue deficit. There's not enough money that comes into the town, which means we're constantly peeling back. And one of the problems that we have now is that we're victims of our success. Now everybody looks around and says, whoa, we finally hit the cliff. It's for real. We had to let go of so many people last year, and we're looking at the same thing for next year. What about these big capital projects? Well, those aren't the issue. We've handled those. We used the debt overrides to handle those, and now we're looking at the operational side of it, and we're forced to face the reality that on the operational side, the money that's available to us is inadequate to the needs that we have. So I just wanted to add that important point that there was so much positive accomplished over that time that brought us to the point, Connor, that you described where fiscally things looked pretty decent in 2022. So I'll stop talking.
Well, I'll just add one more point to this as well. So your point about context, I was on Budget Subcommittee in 2019, and we were getting ready to recommend an override at that time. So things were good, better than they are now, but we also knew we were heading into troublesome waters. And what happened right after that was COVID, and everything changed in every direction you can imagine, from having to pivot on the entire way the town operates and the schools operate. And of course, things shifted around and there are different resources available. So it shifted the timeline a bit, but I think now we're seeing the other effects of that period, that rapid inflationary pressures and just unprecedented economic conditions that are putting pressure on us as a community. Those things come down. And I've said it before in a select board meeting, but every time I get a bill to my house, I go, oh my God, when am I gonna open and see in here? I mean, it's that same effect that we feel as residents happens every time they're planning, how to use our resources and how to address rising healthcare costs and the liabilities that have been mentioned throughout tonight. So that was just all I was going to add. Was there any other questions or comments from the table here before I pass it over? Okay, then I know there's some questions, so.
Denise Higgins, 40 Pondway. Having served on the PACE committee, I know that we've really done an expansive outreach. I just don't know that there's a place that's untapped at this point. I mean, we and you have been everywhere. I think we need to go where our people are. And one of the things that I'm keenly concerned about is disinformation. We have a very active Facebook page out there. That's where our people are, but there's an extraordinary patrol and disinformation. For all of the man and woman power that we've put in, if each one of us took one day to man a Facebook page and to respond, I think that's where our people are. I think that we need to kind of think about a real change up, because it takes an awful lot for all of you collectively out of your time to come here to where we are, but it's also a lot for us to come to you. Our schedules and our dinners and our so forth and whatever, we're in a very, very fast-paced world, and our community needs to get the information really, really fast. We need to get this information out to them pretty fast. I just throw that out there because I spent a good amount of time trying to mitigate the damage that's been done in the public with the information that it's reckless. That's the best word that I can use. I'm really concerned about getting really good information. Coming here, it's very clear that you can get very good information. ECAT can disseminate it very collectively and appropriately, but the consumer has to want to tap into that. I think that the consumer at this point is just like, freaking answer my question real quick, let me get the fact and let me get out. I also want to speak for a second about the override. We can't make this complicated. It's got to be uncomplicated. A single-purpose menu, pyramid, multi-year, whatever, we are going to freaking complicate our community again, and we don't have time. We don't have time to unbundle it and uncomplicate it. We simply just don't have time, and we don't have the power to do it. We don't have the collective energies to do it. So whatever we do needs to be very uncomplicated, because even the unbundling of that, we have to communicate that well to our population. And again, the special town meeting, the town meeting in May, it comes up so quickly that, this is something that we need to do, and we need to do it now.
Thank you, Denise. And I will say, I saw you working very hard on Facebook to bring real factual information to the masses. One challenge I think a lot of us see is I watched you get hammered by people who responded with incorrect information, and some of that information got taken and ran with, even though you were presenting facts. And that's, I think, really a struggle. I personally don't know how to get around that when it comes to social media, because over the years that I've been in, whether it was finance committee or various roles, I've watched things that I've said getting taken out of context, and or any of us, it happens all the time. It will happen tonight, correct? So I don't know. We've talked a lot about the social media piece and don't have a good answer. I'm very private on social media myself, and I've started to put myself out there a little bit more, but it's very difficult for me. It's not a place that I feel safe or comfortable. And I know a lot of us up here have similar feelings or don't use social media at all. So that's a struggle. I will ask if people do feel comfortable in that space and are willing to be like, bring positive, good information forth. Like, we could use all the help we can get. And I said, I do appreciate all you did. I saw you, it was incredible. So thank you. And then as far as the override options go, completely agree with you. That has also been a discussion among the budget subcommittee. There's some complexity in some of these override types. Obviously, the omnibus is an extremely easy, straightforward option, but it failed. And so putting forth what we put forth previously, we know it's not going to work. What we have been hearing from folks is if you try something different, we'd be willing to listen again. So that's just why we're saying, okay, well, if you're willing to listen, then tell us more, because we want to hear more. So the simplicity versus complication factor is definitely at the front and center of our mind, and thank you for raising that again.
I feel obliged to me again in my notes. This issue isn't going to go away, it's very clear, and our surrounding towns and our community, it goes from the lowest level to the community, to the state, to the federal. This isn't going away. I'd like to ask if we give some consideration and think about regionalization so that we can duplicate some efforts, such as we've done in the tri-community with the 911 system. I think that unfortunately going forward, we aren't going to be able to provide the services that we would like to provide. It's just simple math. That maybe we need to consider regionalization. That some of those efforts that we can combine with our neighbors, it might be something that we talk about in the future.
Thank you. I think we've got a really interesting example. Do you want to share about the fire department and the mechanic work? I think it's a good example of
Sure. So, and for folks who are uninitiated, SEMRAC that we're all referring to, we Denise's point is well taken. It's something Easton's done, right? So the override failed 2016. We had to incentivize growth, build sewers, and we did start to regionalize things. So those are hard things to do. That doesn't mean you don't do it. So we dissolved an entire municipal department. We laid off an entire workforce to go to a regional 911, and it has saved Easton millions, and it's a better service, and that's great. But part of what made that possible is that the state creates a financial incentive. The state helped us build a $10 million communication center at High Rock. And so I'm agreeing with you. And there's other areas where we've tried to find other ways to improve, like we had a mechanic in the fire department who was also left. But that program was going well, right? Paying, you think about when you take your car into the shop and it's bad, like imagine taking a fire truck. It is like, you're never sleeping again. So instead of doing that, we brought a staffer on, specialized in fire trucks and ambulances. We were saving money, and those things thankfully don't break every single day. And so we started actually signing contracts with neighbor cities and towns saying, we can beat the price of the private sector mechanic you're using, send your stuff to us. And we would charge them, not gouge them, but charge them. And so we started bringing in some revenue to put into our own fund. So our fire department, when they have a fix that's too complicated or specialized, and we do have to send it out, that we actually have revenue coming in from our own people fixing other people's vehicles. And so as we move into those new buildings, one of the things that's really good is we'll have mechanic bays, because right now we fix fire trucks outside because they can't fit in some of our buildings. And so that will give an opportunity for us, hopefully, because we will get through this one day, one way. We have no choice. The community will be positioned well by these facilities that you have wisely invested in, because then we'll have space to bring apparatus from other communities in. Is that going to address a 10% healthcare increase? It's not. There's going to need to continue to be efforts at the state level to push towards reforms, but that gets challenging in Massachusetts because folks like home rule in this state. They like having local school districts and local government and being able to walk it. If you go to a county and all of a sudden you have, instead of a town administrator that you people find me, and I'll give you my time. If you have one county administrator and 600,000 residents, it's not the same. That doesn't mean it's wrong or worse, it's just very different. And so I do agree, the forces at play here are so significant and happening statewide. That's why we put that statewide report that I had a small part contributing to. These conversations are getting to the state legislature, that these are pressures that even if folks do approve overrides, we all appreciate that. Like that can't just keep going on forever. So point well taken. We agree. We've done so, and we need to keep doing so.
Denise, I just want to say thank you too for putting the importance on now, right? That's why the budget subcommittee started at basically late July meeting, which is kind of unheard of, but we knew we needed to speed up all the information we could get and gather, even if it wasn't perfect, because we know what the trends are. So it was pretty easy to start looking preliminarily at budgets. And so we're hard at work now, and you're right, it's the information needs to get to folks now. January's too late, and we talked about that too. The normal budget cycle would kind of begin in earnest in January, and by March things look pretty tightened up, so you're going forward to the public. It's happening now. We're getting it out there now, and we need everybody engaged now. So thank you. That's our mission between now and December 10th. How many people can we get to show up at the next meeting, December 10th?
I don't want to belabor the point, but I also want to be clear, it can't just be our mission. We don't have the staff resources. We don't have the number of people. It needs to be your mission. This is your community. And, I am fully aware that there are some folks that they tune me out. I've been around a while. They don't want to hear structural revenue deficit anymore. I don't take it personally.
I don't want to hear it anymore either.
But they will listen to their neighbor or their friend. And so I'm not trying to say, okay, you go fix it, but I would add, like, you all came and gave your time, and I really appreciate that. But as Jamie said, of like getting 10 people to care, we can't do that. Communities that have seen overrides pass, Melrose just passed the largest override in the state, right? And folks looked at Easton 7.3 and said, this must be the biggest thing ever. I was featured on a panel of losers for the finance committees of Massachusetts. I'm not used to that being why I get called out to the conference circuit, but I was a good sport, I think. Of other communities that all lost, and Easton's override was the smallest because these problems are really severe. Melrose voter turnout, I believe, don't quote me, you can go look online, but I think their voter turnout was close to 60%. Ours was 33%. There is nothing that a town administrator or a superintendent can do to make that change. That's a cultural decision that happens at the ground level, and not even telling only people to go vote yes, right? Because I'm definitely not going anywhere near that. I would drive someone to the polls to vote no, because I believe in democracy. But talking to your neighbors to say, this matters. We need you, please.
When you mentioned regionalizing, it's a dangerous word within education, but for us, we've really partnered with a couple local school districts recently for specialized positions. And so we currently have a job posting that we're sharing with the Norton Public Schools. We've also sharing a position right now with Old Rochester Regional School District and SMEC Collaborative on the South Coast, because it was a cost savings for us, and it was able to really try to hire in very tough situations that we're facing right now. We also, over the summer, we posted 2 specialized positions within the school district that we've never had before, and you're fighting for maybe 10 to 12 people in the field. We were lucky enough to hire one this summer in a very, very specialized position. That was a huge cost savings for us. One other thing that we did this year was we worked with our local collaborative. We're renting space within our middle school, 3 classrooms and an office, to create revenue within the school district that is being able to go into our revolving account to fund a position this year. So we're thinking outside the box in areas that we've never been challenged to before to be able to save positions within the school district.
Did I have a hand over here earlier?
She left.
No, okay, she left. That's when I got it. So Dottie, your hand was up. one point. Did you want to talk still, or are you good?
No, well,
No.
when you were talking about the complications, I was going to say, suggest to talk about the red book.
Yes.
Just talk about this one.
Do you want to talk about it? Okay.
Thank you. So what Dot's referring to is everyone here, show of hands, when there's a ballot question in the state November elections, you get a red book mailed to you. Are you familiar with that? Right? And I think that, so the Secretary of State's office, if there's a ballot question like the fair share tax or the audit, the state sends a red book to every house that has a neutral, just factual statement. This is what this question means. Because the form of questions is dictated by state law. And so it can be hard to you're looking at it and you're like, what does this even say? Shall raise and transfer from like, what does this mean, right? And so the state gives red books out that says, this is what this means in plain English. And then they have, they allow folks to have an advocacy. The state doesn't write it, but citizens, a yes argument and a no argument. There is a provision in state law for cities and towns to adopt a similar provision that we have not done, but there are some communities who have, and the select board is considering it under the law. It's a vote of the select board to adopt the provision, and what it would do is although the book might not be read because we can't afford color ink right now, there'd be a mailer that goes, nonpartisan mailer that would go to every house in Easton in advance of the ballot that says, here's what these questions mean from a factual standpoint. From the town would be stating what the ballot question would mean from the kind of information standpoint. And then there would be a yes argument that either a citizen of Easton or a ballot committee would submit to be put in, and a no. And so we're looking at that, as that might be a way to cut through the noise. Because Denise, I think the hard reality is social media is designed to make everyone hate each other. That's not my opinion, that is a fact. It is algorithmically programmed to make you mad and angry, so you stay online and consume ads to make billionaires richer. It's not a conspiracy theory. That is how the platforms work. So going on social media and expecting civil dialogue is like walking into a burning house and being surprised it's hot. It is designed to make people fight, because then your instincts kick in and you stay on the phone longer and you see more ads. That doesn't mean you just seed it, you don't put facts out. But the reality is that it's about what can we do, and the red book might be one thing that's helpful, and then what can citizens do? Because when you get folks in a room and talk about it, you can make some progress even if you don't see eye to eye. Whereas on social media, it's gonna put the top of your feed, even if your long lost friend from college posted a beautiful picture of their kid, your feed is gonna give you whatever people are yelling about near you, right? And so we might do the red book. We're gonna make that decision shortly. And I'd be interested in feedback from everyone here if you think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll just add that the effect of not having a town newspaper has been really, really harming us over the past several years. And a lot of people who previously went to that news source for their information have ended up on
social media, the
Chamber of Hate, social media. So, it's a big effect that we just can't quite figure out how to get around. And again, any input on strategies and tactics for reaching more people effectively are always appreciated. All right, yes, another question.
Hi, Nancy Howe, 100 Highland Street. Just a comment. I was just struck with what you just said. I'm sorry, I forget your name. I should know your name, Special Ed Director. That's a really positive thing that I didn't know about. So maybe it's naive of me, but maybe if we focus on whatever positives we've been doing and emphasize that rather than the negatives and kind of the horror stories, because nobody really likes to hear that. Maybe they need to hear it, but just a thought, to try to communicate all the whatever positive, creative things, ways you've gotten around. I know that can backfire too, but I'm thinking might be a good idea.
Thank you. Does anybody want to?
Thank you, Nancy. I
I agree that it's a balancing act that we do. We certainly want to share the positive. And there's so much positive going on, and we talk about it during the select board meetings. And I think the two people that watch those know a lot of positive things going on. Some of the grants we've recently been awarded. But you're right, the balance has to be, people also need to know how serious this is and the position we're in and the tough decisions that have already been made to get us into the beginning of this year, and then what happens for the next fiscal year. So I agree with you. All doom strategy isn't good, but certainly letting people know the gravity of the situation.
Well, I was just going to say, it was a couple of years ago, I think, in Dr. Cabral's budget presentation, she had a slide where she went through, these are all the mitigations we've tried to do, these are all the ways we've tried to save money, we've tried to save staff, and I think maybe that's not a bad idea to bring up. It's in there every year. Mm-hmm. We'll just keep doing that as well, and maybe even talk about that at budget subcommittee meetings as well. I think that is a helpful idea to see that. It's not just all of a sudden we're trying to fix. This is something that we've been trying to fix for 10 years. And over 10 years, we've employed these various strategies to try to keep us going. So now we're at the end of our rope, but there have been a lot of strategies, and I think it'd be great to share that more often. So thank you.
Anyone else at the table? Thank you for that perspective. Any other questions or comments from anybody in the room?
Geraldine Connor, 2 Beech Tree Lane. I have an easy, quick question. You've all alluded to the fact that the classroom sizes have been getting larger. What has the enrollment, how has that impacted the classroom sizes? Has there been an increase in enrollment or not?
Thank you. So we have had a slow decline in enrollment for several years until we built the Blanche James Elementary School. Now the classes coming in are larger than ever before. So we have this bubble that's coming through that is at the elementary school now and moving up. However, if we haven't lost enough students to lose staff and keep class sizes the same. The class sizes have increased because of the number of students we still have. So while we've had a modest decline over 10 or 15 years, that is, and they told us, if you build it, they will come, which is the point, right? So our kindergarten, pre-K, and first grade classes are our largest right now, and they're moving through the system.
And is that a result of people moving into town?
Moving into town and expressing to us that they moved into town for the school system and for the new school.
So that increases your tax revenue because now you've got more people paying taxes.
And it increases your home value to the second highest in the region, yes.
I'm getting my work out in today.
Kathy Jones, 25 Scotch Fam. I just recently moved to Easton. I just wanted to say I think the Red Book is a great idea. I think it's very helpful. People spend a lot of time on screens, and sometimes that's something you can take with you anywhere and read one or another or another. It struck me with a couple of the comments here that people really don't understand. And, when you're in these social jobs, things do take a long time, 10 years, 5 years for the advanced planning, and I think you have a fairly stable community here with a lot of people, but incomes and the tax base going up, you're in quite a crunch of a challenge. I don't know enough about, all of it, but it did seem revenue raising was one of the things that crossed my mind. You've started down that path. Regionalization is something else. I'm a little curious about the benefits in the healthcare because that's the area that I work in. So, I don't know enough about that to comment yet. But I was at the town hall recently, and I thought it was interesting that people, readily approved $300,000 for the farm to have, improvements over there, and I don't think they do understand what the trade-offs are. You know, now we're talking about a completely different set of people to some extent with, you know, different issues and comments. You know, the Red Book or something might be helpful in tying it together, because I'm wondering, would all of those people have raised their hand to fix a barn? I realize the historical property is very valued here, but if they're, you know, putting that against school issues or staffing of the services or the seniors or things like that. So I do think there's, it's a tough job for sure to get people to understand. I don't think it's a trust issue. Maybe there's some of that. Certainly Facebook will, you know, put that there. But it sounds like from a couple of the comments that people don't understand. I don't know. Thank you all for, you know, the efforts, the service, the thoughts, the time.
Thank you for just moving here and jumping right into the fun with the town meeting and budget subcommittees. Really appreciate it. One thing I'll point out is, I was just going to point out so one thing, getting to the point about people understanding things, that I think a theme came up during town meeting was frustration around certain spend requests and the lack of understanding of where the different buckets of streams of funding come from. So you raised the point about the barn. That's actually funded through our CPA. Community Preservation Fund. So this is a program at the state level that there's a small, I think 3% of a tax surcharge goes into this, but we elect to be part of this. We voted this as a community part of this. And Massachusetts matches it. It's a fantastic program, and it really ensures that recreational, historical, and affordable housing, you know, functions are given resources and prioritized in the community. And it's done great things across the community. That's something we can actually highlight in the slide somewhere. I think we've talked about it many times over the years. So it was a great point you made about just misunderstanding and prioritization. And, you know, we just will keep on sharing that information. Does anybody want anything else?
Sure. Yeah, so I echo, thank you for moving here and then immediately getting involved. So that's, you now have to run for office. That's cool.
I was thinking it, but you said it.
So to build on Jen's point, that's kind of the same dichotomy and challenge I think we face with our capital projects, right? The barn specifically, so anything that's a CPA article, it's a Community Preservation Act, not only was that a state program that voters here opted into, I think about 20 years ago, under the law, we cannot spend that money on anything but that. So it's a great question, and I just want to emphasize for anyone who might watch this later that it isn't at the expense of the school or the staff, right? Because that we would not be putting forward things like that out of the general fund, and we don't. And that's actually, I think, the spirit of that law, which is recognition that if fixing historic assets or cultural assets had to compete in the same revenue stream as funding an ambulance, it would never, ever get funded. And so the CPA gave a tool to communities in Massachusetts to say, we're willing to do a kind of dedicated surtax that goes into it's a specific accounted segregated fund that a separate group of citizens have control over. They review grant asks publicly, and it can only legally be spent on recreation, historic preservation, affordable housing, and open space preservation, which those are things that when you think of Easton, and I'd be curious to know why you moved here, and if you don't want to say it on camera, you don't have to, but I'd love to hear it. But when you think of Easton and you think of things like the Queesick Gardens, or you think of, the Governor Ames Estate, or you think of, many of our parks, the open space, Oaks Ames Hall, the CPA made those possible, and we would not be here without it. But yes, just want to make clear where we agree with you, and we would not be funding, no matter how nice of a barn it may be, it would never jump the line before firefighters and teachers.
Is there another question or comment point down the table?
Connor said what I was going to say.
Okay. Any more questions or comments from anyone in the room? No? No one wants to share anything about services or positions on overrides? Yes.
Mickey Wolf, 27 Round Street. I just wanted to actually comment, not a question, which is that I saw that library budgets are up there. Library budgets are statutorily required by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners to increase 2.5% of the average of the 3 years budget. If that does not happen, they will not be certified. You can go before the MDLC and get a waiver, maybe 1, maybe 2 years, but then the community of Easton will lose participation in the network, so they'll drop out of the sales network. Libraries across the state, I'm a librarian, we're all having the same conversations. So I just want to bring that to people's attention, that people will lose access to the sales network as well.
Yep.
Thank you. It's a good example of the downstream effects and how they trickle through over time and have longer term impacts and bigger impacts. So anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, no one wants to comment on the overrides, any opinions, or I think everyone's getting tired, it's all good. So I'm gonna go up here and close this out. Unless anybody at the table has a closing remark before me.
I just want to say that the print.
Go for it.
The slide that told you how to stay engaged in emails, websites, we have hard copies of that printed at a table. So if you don't have that, please take it. Please ask your neighbors to get involved. Come to a meeting. That's there, so please take that. Thank you.
Kind of stole my closing corner.
Sorry.
It's all good. So yes, getting back to what Connor said, he said it perfectly, but I'm going to kind of add the Jen flair. If you didn't speak tonight or something comes to mind, please, or you watch this video later and you're like, I just need to get this out, email us, please. We would love to see your emails. It's really, really important. We don't get enough emails. So please share your thoughts, comments. If you didn't speak tonight or, for whatever reason, it's a great way to reach us. And please, come on December 10th and bring 10 friends and tell them to bring 10 friends. And if the room is overflowing, that'd be a good problem because we want more of this. And I think there was a lot of great conversation here and information tonight. And I think we can do even better on December 10th. And definitely sign up to Town Crier because it's a great resource. So with that, I am going to close the meeting. I want to thank you again, and I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, so that's DePietro and Reed. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that is unanimous. So this budget subcommittee meeting is over. Thank you, everybody.